Hello, everybody. We're here with the Park Slope Food Co-op cooking class. This is our April edition. I'm William Dorian, and I'm here with Rachel Liu, who has been a co-op member for the last 5 years.
Yes.
Rachel is originally from Houston, but she's been in New York for 8 years now. She came here for school and never left, like many people.
Yes.
She managed the Columbia's bartending
Agency and school.
Yes.
Yes.
Which really kind of launched her into hosting events and parties and preparing foods that make sense in those situations, and sharing that information with folks and teaching people how to host and entertain and be a cook.
Yes, absolutely.
So Rachel's going to show us some of her favorite recipes this evening.
Yes.
We are here in her kitchen in Brooklyn. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rachel, and let you, give a little bit of background and kind of launch into the class.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you've covered most of it.
I'm going to slide off camera.
Okay, sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel, and you're going to be cooking today with me in my Brooklyn apartment. I actually live in Prospect Heights, so kind of close to the co-op, which is a fun coincidence and very, very exciting for me as a shopper there. Today, we're going to make 3 different recipes. We are going to make a lemonade, which is a herb lemonade or fruit lemonade, depending on what you have currently in your kitchen with you. We're going to make a shrimp cocktail, and then we're going to make a pesto butter beans with lemon zest and ricotta. So those are 3 dishes that I chose. The reason that I chose these 3 dishes is they are all very, very easy, very, very doable. They're really easy to scale, which is perfect for hosting. And they all utilize things that you typically have already in your kitchen or around your home, which is really great. These are all things that you can really spruce up, things that you can kind of take from simple to elevated with a couple small tweaks. And the reason for this class itself is that I love hosting. I love being able to bring people together. And especially in a place like New York City, where everybody has smaller apartments, it can feel very difficult to host. It is very sometimes expensive, is laborious. Sometimes people get really intimidated by how to even go about it. But I think the more that you host, the easier it gets. And so I'm hoping a couple of these tips that you guys pick up today in this class will help you feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more confident in hosting. And really and truly, like once you have good food, that does most of the hosting for you. So all you got to do is nail down a couple different recipes that you can use over and over again, and then hosting will become a breeze. All right, so double checking for prep. If you have your shrimp and you haven't defrosted it yet, this is the time to grab that bag of shrimp, put it under some tap water and start running it so you can defrost it quickly. It should only take a couple of minutes. And then also as a second check, the other thing we asked you guys to do ahead of time was prep some lemon juice by squeezing about 9 lemons. So I'm gonna go grab mine. So this is the lemon juice that I already pre-squeezed, and this is my defrosted shrimp. So if you are a co-op member and you bought this shrimp as well, one of the handy things about it is that you can just keep it in your freezer. And so what I do is I almost always have a bag of this shrimp in my freezer, and anytime I'm hosting, I just grab it, whip it out, and it's super easy. All right, so we're gonna start by setting up an ice bath for the shrimp cocktail. So the reason for this is basically when you cook shrimp cocktail, what you're doing is you're very lightly poaching the shrimp, and then you're putting them in an ice bath to shock them and stop it from further cooking. And that's because you want that really kind of like tender, not super like rubbery or overcooked kind of texture to the shrimp cocktail. That's super ideal. And so the ice bath is really important. So all I'm gonna do is just grab some ice. My very messy freezer, by the way.
So very small.
All right, so let's go with that for now. Okay, and then I'm just gonna add some water. And that is going to create our ice bath, and I just have that ready and waiting. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up 2 different mixtures that we're gonna boil on the stove. So the first is going to be for the shrimp cocktail. So what I'm going to use, and also an FYI that this recipe is actually halved from the typical Bon Appetit recipe that I shared with everybody. The reason for that is because I figured that you guys do not need a full pound of shrimp cocktail at your home right now. So instead I was thinking maybe half a pound is something that you could easily sit and eat by yourself and not feel too much shame for. But basically what we're gonna do is an 1/8 cup of salt, So grab your spoons and salt for that. Then we're going to do the same with sugar. So it's equal parts salt and sugar. Okay. And then what we're going to do next is we are going to take 1 lemon. Note here, if you're buying from the co-op, the lemons, take the sticker off. This is a simple one, but just in case, just a reminder to take it off. So you don't really want that gunk in all of your liquid. And then you're just going to take a knife. And what you're going to do is just slice that in half. And then you're going to just take the lemon, just squeeze it in there, and then just drop in that half. And then do the same thing with the other half. All right, and then I'm going to fill this with water.
Roughly how much water do you think you're putting in there? Is it like halfway up or?
Not quite halfway up. I usually go for enough to cover the lemons and then enough space for all the shrimp.
Got it.
So usually that is pretty good. All right, then I'm just going to throw that on the stove and turn it on to boil it. I'm just going to cover it to speed it up a little bit. And then the next thing we're going to set up is our simple syrup. So for the simple syrup, what we are doing in this one is 1 cup of sugar and 1 cup water. So simple syrup is just equal parts sugar and water. And then you boil it basically so that the sugar dissolves, is well incorporated in. I'm just going to do that. It's 1 cup right there. So a couple add-ins that you can put in here. If you are going to do a fruit, and basically you have fruit that's a little bit older. So in my case, basically I have these strawberries right here that are really gross. If we look very closely, you can see that they're a little bit older. I may have forgotten about them in my fridge for about a week. This is a perfect use case for a syrup like this. And so basically, if you were going to do a fruit that is a little bit fresher, like you have strawberries that are in good condition, what you can do is puree them and add them into the lemonade later. But because mine are a little bit older and not looking so great, I'm going to go ahead and boil them with the simple syrup mixture, just so that I get more flavor extracted from them. And I'm going to set that also.
So far that's about a cup of strawberries and a lemon,
yep.
And your sugar and water.
The lemon is in this one. No lemon in that right now.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm just going to actually leave that off so you can see that. Okay, so now we have all of that ready. I'm going to talk you guys through a couple of things about shrimp cocktail as we're waiting for that to boil. And the reason that I love shrimp cocktail so much. So let me show you guys a couple different ways that you can show your beautiful shrimp cocktail. Okay, so the fun thing about shrimp cocktail is visually it is really beautiful on its own, but you can kind of amp it up for different situations. So I always make shrimp cocktail, but to make sure people never get bored of eating the same shrimp cocktail, I make it look very different every time. So one of my favorite ways to do it is at Christmas, or if you were having some other kind of nature themed party, what you can do is just get one of these. This is like $4 off of like Amazon or Michael's. This is like a cone, a styrofoam cone. And basically what I do is if you're going to make a Christmas tree, a shrimp cocktail Christmas tree, what you do is you buy a bunch of kale and you kind of layer it around the edge, and then you can kind of just rubber band it on. And then from there, I take a bunch of cocktail picks and I'll just kind of like in there, and then I'll hang the shrimp cocktail off of the tree. And people go crazy for this. Literally everybody was taking photos. They were obsessed with it. They're like, this is a perfect Pinterest board moment. So this is one fun way to show off shrimp cocktail. Another really fun thing you can do is just a coupe glass. This is my special shrimp cocktail coupe glass. But you can basically just kind of rim it around and then put cocktail sauce in the middle. You can also serve it on ice is a really beautiful way to do it, or in a seafood tower, or in a wreath. There's a million ways to present it, and it has a lot of wow factor anytime you do that. The other really great thing about shrimp cocktail is it can also be kind of elevated through the flavors as well. So a couple examples of this, if you look online, there are some great recipes for gochujang or vinegar shrimp cocktail, lemon shrimp cocktail, garlic shrimp cocktail, little things that people will add usually into the poaching liquid to kind of elevate that shrimp cocktail. And like, you can kind of experiment with it. You know, you could do horseradish, you could do dill. You can try out a bunch of different things. And then with it, I had you guys grab today some cocktail sauce. Let's see if I can find mine. So sometimes I will just buy a cocktail sauce to make my life a little bit easier. But you don't have to serve it with cocktail sauce. You can also serve it with other things like butter. I've seen people do it with like kind of a fun ranch. Or if you go on the New York Times Cooking, there is a recipe by Genevieve Coe that does a cranberry sauce. That is kind of an interesting one as well. So that is the fun thing about shrimp cocktail is you can really mix it up. You can really elevate it. And the reason I love shrimp cocktail itself is because it is always a hit. I don't think I've ever had leftovers, which is a little bit of a bummer because I actually really love shrimp cocktail. So I would have no problem with leftovers, but people always eat it up and there's literally not a single shrimp left. Sometimes I barely get an actual shrimp when I'm throwing a party. It's great because it's a protein and it's filling without being too expensive. So like usually you want to incorporate some sort of protein so people are full during your party, but that can get very, very difficult because a lot of other meat starters can be very time intensive or they can be very expensive. And so you also don't really want meat sitting around, but shrimp cocktail can be served on ice. So it does have kind of more longevity.
It's a quick question. Somebody asked about ratio of shrimp per
Yes.
person, like roughly how many do you think? If
Yes.
you're hosting 10 people, for example.
So I think it depends on how big your spread is, what else you have kind of complementing it. But I would say typically for a party of about like 10 to 15 people, I will do 1 pound of shrimp cocktail. But I think if you're seeing that, people are loving shrimp cocktail, one of the things that's really great too, that I will sometimes do is I will make a little bit more and I'll batch it. So let's say I make, 2 pounds of shrimp. What I'll do is store half of it in deli containers and put it in the fridge and then put the other half out. And then once I see that that's running low, then I'll go grab the rest. And that also kind of helps make sure that people aren't kind of like eating all of it at once, but rather kind of like you're getting to portion it out a little bit. Which speaks to one of the other things I love about shrimp cocktail, which is that you can prepare it ahead of time. So you can do this 2 to 3 days in advance and just have it sit in the fridge, just pull it out once you're ready to serve, which is really, really helpful, especially when you're planning a bunch of other dishes and you have a lot of like time intensive prep right before the party. And then lastly, the reason it's great is because it's light and refreshing and it is a really great finger food that is not too messy, which is really, really helpful is when you have a lot of people in a New York City apartment and everyone's standing around, you don't want them having, like a meatball with a ton of sauce that's just flinging around. You're like nervous about your couch. And the nice thing about shrimp cocktail is I've never had a mishap yet, knock on wood, but it is very easy and people tend to not get too messy with it. So that's really helpful. All right, so I'm gonna check on this to see if it's boiling. Okay, so I do see basically that the simple syrup is boiling if you wanna come take a look. All right, and basically what I'm looking for is basically, let me do a little stir.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you want the sugar to dissolve and then come to a boil. And because I have these strawberries in here, I'm gonna let it go for like a little bit longer till they're basically soft. And you see that it's kind of like a red color. Right now it's not quite there. So I'm just gonna keep letting that go. If you have your simple syrup on though, and you aren't doing any fruit here, if you are already seeing that the sugar is dissolved, you can turn off the heat. So only if you have fruit in there should you leave it on at this point. Okay, and then with this liquid, we're pretty close to boiling. So I'm gonna get ready my shrimp because what's gonna happen is I am going to throw it in for just 3.5 minutes. Interestingly, people differ quite a bit on how much time to poach shrimp for in a shrimp cocktail. I have found that the Bon Appetit 3.5 minutes has never failed me. And what you're basically looking for visually is for it to turn pink, but not too curled up because if it's too curled up, it's overcooked. And then you want to make sure that it has kind of like that like nice texture when you think of like a really good shrimp cocktail. All right, so I would say it is pretty close. So I'm gonna go for it. Just turn off the heat and then you're just gonna drop your shrimp in there. Alexa, set a timer for 3.5 minutes. Oops, sorry. Okay, and I'm gonna give it a little stir just to make sure it's all good there. Okay, I'm just gonna let that sit for a second. And then at the same time, I'm gonna grab a colander. Okay, and I'm gonna have that ready right here. Ooh.
Uh-oh, strawberries.
Yeah, that really went off. Just give that a second. Let that calm down. To this one.
So just a
Less
side
sauce.
note for cooking, a good way to cool down a pan is to immediately pull it off the heat.
Yes. Are you offering that as a real dish?
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, how crazy. Alexa, how much time left? Okay. So if you look here, it's starting to turn a little pink, but it's not quite as pink as we would like it. Do you see that? So we're still gonna wait the full 3.5 minutes. While we're waiting for this, if you guys want to drop in the chat, are there any flavor combos that you'd be interested in trying with the shrimp cocktail? Things that really intrigue you? Or things that you've had before that were really fantastic as well in a shrimp cocktail flavoring? Anything?
Not yet.
All right, that's fair. Well, you guys start thinking about it. Let me know. So this is what the syrup's starting to look like. You can see that these are kind of turning soft. Do you see that right there, that give? And keep in mind, these are just kind of like older strawberries, so that's like helpful.
Yeah, it's a great way to use produce that's not super fresh, but it's not bad yet.
Yes, exactly. And the nice thing here is you can always puree it in later, or you can strain it out if it's, you don't want quite as much flavor, but it's just a great way to go kind of no waste with a little bit older produce.
Someone in the chat said love horseradish.
Okay. As a sauce or as a flavoring for the shrimp cocktail?
I feel like a sort of a Vietnamese or a Thai bread could be really nice with like some cilantro or some different spices.
That's fun. If you did almost like a spring roll take, kind of what if you did like a little peanut butter? I don't know how you would even do this.
It maybe in the cocktail sauce?
Yeah, potentially. That'd be really good. All right.
So the horseradish person said for both.
Oh, both the sauce and in the flavoring of the shrimp
A
cocktail.
horseradish extravaganza.
All right, big horseradish lover.
Somebody else said I also like a little heat sriracha.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love that. Okay, also, if you are doing your simple syrup and you have turned it off, if you have any herbs you're going to throw in, feel free to throw them in just about now. I'm going to go grab a little bit of thyme. But basically with this, you can choose any herbs, but the way that you treat them will be a little bit different, and it will depend on how much herb flavor you want in there. So if you want a very light herb flavor, what you can do is after you're done with assembling the lemonade, you can just drop the herbs in, have them sit in the lemonade for a bit. If you want more herb flavor, you can boil them a little bit in the simple syrup itself, which is what I'm going to do, kind of turning it off, not quite boiling, but letting it sit in there. Alexa, turn off the timer. And basically, only cautionary tale here is if you're going to use an herb like basil, you don't really want to boil that. It will get really bitter and disgusting. But things like thyme, sage, very doable. Okay, so I'm taking my shrimp cocktail. I'm just going to
just turn the heat off of the shrimp.
I turned it off at the beginning.
For the full time
Yeah.
of the 3.5 minutes.
Yes. Okay, so that is what my shrimp cocktail looks like.
Beautiful.
Yeah, she's a pretty one. All right, so I'm going to move it into the ice bath now. So to do that, I'm just gonna grab the tongs.
Maybe slide the ice back over here so we can see it a little bit
Yes.
better. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. And that's just gonna shock them and stop them from cooking right there. Okay, so that is what your shrimp cocktail should look like. Get that in your ice bath. Okay, so back to the lemonade, and the reason that lemonade can be so great is you can scale it really easily. You can make huge quantities as well. You're seeing probably a little bit of a theme here with everything that I've chosen. You can also make it ahead of time. It can sit in your fridge as well. And even if you are in a party and you're currently hosting, there are times that if I have the lemon juice, the fruit puree, and then also kind of the sparkling water, I'll just throw it together like in the middle of a party. I don't recommend it. It's not like the perfect way to do it. But in case you're in a bind, it is helpful that you can replenish mid-party if you have everything prepped. We love that it can be a mocktail or a cocktail. So if you have friends who are not super into drinking or someone who's pregnant, it's really helpful because you can very easily make it either way. It also uses a lot of things that you already have in your home. Most people have lemons, sugar, and water, so very doable. People are also very wildly impressed when you make your own lemonade, even though it's super easy. And then people will love it. People will drink it up, honestly, and people will be very impressed by the little things you add in.
One question, water was brought to a boil and then turned off before the shrimp was added?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. And the reason for that is you don't want to actually boil the shrimp, you want to poach it. And so you don't want it to actually be
So you
running.
bring it to a boil, turn the heat off, and then start the timer.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
Okay, so we are going to assemble the lemonade now. So let me just clear a couple things. So this is the pitcher that I'm going to make my lemonade into. All right. If you have sparkling water that you're going to add in, this would be a great time. Oh, let me actually show you also. Do you want to come over here? A couple other fun ways to make syrups out of kind of leftovers in a no waste way. So if you are a big mango eater like I am, you can really save up your mango peels and then throw them into the simple syrup and make a mango syrup, which is fun. If you are making, last week I made a pavlova, and so I had a bunch of supremed oranges and blood oranges. I threw them in with a bunch of sugar, and I've left them in my fridge for a couple days to make what is a chong, which is like a Korean like simple syrup kind of adjacent mixture.
So
that's
those
really
are just
handy.
citrus rinds in there with sugar?
Exactly.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay, really simple.
Yes, and that just kind of sits there. It's very easy, but very impressive to people. I also actually, fun fact, if you're a forager, I make magnolia syrup every spring. So those beautiful magnolias you see outside actually have like a ginger flavor. If you pick a couple of those and boil them with, you know, sugar and water, you can make a magnolia syrup, which is really tasty. And I typically have all of this just kind of sitting in my fridge, but these are all things that you can make very easily if you have, you know, just some citrus peels or mango peels sitting around. All right, okay, so we are going to assemble our lemonade. So start with your lemon juice. You should have squeezed this previously. Just kind of pour that into the pitcher that you're going to use. And then I'm going to grab my simple syrup. Actually, second. So this is my simple syrup. I'm just gonna, ooh, that's so messy. The syrup is making such a mess.
No, you got most of it into the pitcher. That's okay.
I got like the smallest amount in the pitcher, but that's okay. All right, so let me just kind of clean this up a little bit. Okay, and then the very last thing that you need for your lemonade is just some water. I like to use sparkling water because it kind of makes it seem even fancier than it is. But you can really just use normal water as well. So you're just going to pour that in. Just going to give that a minute to fizz up and down.
Poaching shrimp is so forgiving, no tough shrimp.
That's true. It's really nice because it has a great texture and people will eat it up.
So for the lemonade, Rachel, do
Yes.
you have any other recommendations for different fruits that might be really great to use or that are, you know, about to be in season maybe since spring is here?
Yeah, peaches are really fantastic when you're deep in the heat of summer. Any kind of berry also is great in the summer. I love a little fig lemonade every once in a while, but that's kind of a more expensive kind of bougie take on it.
Yeah.
And then you can also do things like mix up the citrus a little bit, so you can add a little bit of lime to make it like a lemon limeade. Or if you want to go in a different direction, a crowd pleaser always is an Arnold Palmer. So if you have some black tea around, mix it with the lemonade, and then boom, you have a hit. With this lemonade, sometimes I will also add a couple slices of lemon, just as like a nice garnish to throw in. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that.
So another question on the shrimp, do they need to be defrosted if they were frozen?
Yes, they do. That is important, just so you're cooking it for so little time. You want to make sure that that texture gets perfectly where you want it to be. All right, so once you have your lemonade and you've assembled everything, you're going to do a quick stir, just to make sure everything is incorporated. So kind of just make sure there's that. Just getting everything together. And then also taste test it, you know, try it out, see if you want a little bit more sweetness, you want a little bit of water. Different people want different things.
It's a really pretty color.
Yeah, you want to try it?
Sure.
What do you need more of?
Oh, that's really nice.
I love how surprised you are.
Yeah, the strawberry is really nice.
Okay, lovely. All right, we're gonna go back to our shrimp
Cheers,
now.
everybody.
So with the shrimp, once we have let it sit in the ice bath for a minute, we're gonna switch over gears to drying off the shrimp. So grab your shrimp in its ice bath. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take each shrimp and you're just gonna lay it down on paper towel so you can kind of dry it off. So take all of those shrimp out of its nice little ice bath. It should be very cold at this point. You want to show this one too? So at the co-op, what's really nice is they have some shrimp where it is peeled except for the tails, and then some that needs to be peeled. It still has kind of like the shell on. What I like to do is I'll get whichever one is there, honestly, because that shrimp sells so fast from the co-op. But if you are using shrimp that has more of a shell on, this is where I would recommend that you pat it off and then peel it. And if you're prepping for a party, I would peel that ahead of time just so you save yourself a little bit of time. But I'm just gonna dry it off and then I'll show you guys an example of how I would maybe plate this. Okay, so this is my cute little shrimp cocktail coupe glass. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of just rim these, just sit them like this, all around the outside. Kind of space these kind of badly, honestly, but kind of like that.
Beautiful.
And there you go. And then you can just throw your cocktail sauce right there in the middle. So
Someone said now it's a party. Agreed, Wendy.
all right, and then there you go. That is your shrimp cocktail. And if you want to garnish it also with like a little squeeze of like a lemon wedge as well, that could be very cute. And that's what it looks like.
Very pretty.
You want one?
Of course.
Go ahead.
If I can do this and keep the camera steady at the same time. I had you to hold the camera on me. Yeah. For the record, it's very good.
All right, we're gonna move over now to the butter beans. We're gonna start by making a pesto.
Another one.
Yes, go for it. Do you want one as well? Okay. All right, so we're gonna start with the pesto for the butter beans. And I'm gonna start by grabbing my basil. Okay, so fun fact about the co-op basil is if you get the kind with roots, what you can do is put it in a deli container with water and then put one of those compostable or one of those plastic bags over it. I have had this basil for 2 weeks and this is what it looks like. Shocked. That's what I'm saying.
Amazing.
And it is a huge lifesaver because otherwise you're going through a bunch of basil. You have to change out the water. So if you see it getting kind of gross every couple of days, change out the water and you leave it on your countertop. Usually you don't quite leave it in your fridge. That was just kind of a place that I needed a little bit of space. But your basil will look lovely like this. So here's what we're going to grab and put into a food processor or a blender. We're going to start with basil, a good handful of basil. So let's grab maybe this one. And I'm just going to put the basil right in here. And we're going for a good handful of basil. So kind of at your discretion of how much you're feeling, honestly. And there are certain recipes that you can use for basil that have more exact measurements. This one is just more focused on the butter beans than the basil per se, which is why it's a little bit looser with some of the definitions here. So we're just gonna put in, that's a good handful to me, honestly.
I can already smell it.
And then what we're gonna grab next is a good handful of pine nuts. You can toast these for a little bit extra pizzazz, but I just kind of have them as is. And I'm gonna say, like, that's a handful. Okay. And then next up, we are going to take 1 garlic clove. So this is my garlic clove, throw that in there. Okay. And then 25 grams of Parmesan cheese grated. This is my Parmesan that I already pre-grated. Throw that in there. And then 4 to 5 tablespoons of olive oil. So I like to go with this olive oil is my favorite from the co-op, just because it is great and not crazy expensive, but really good quality. So we're going to measure out 4 tablespoons. So once you have that all in there, what you're going to do is just put on that cap, and then you're going to and usually I'll do a scrape down the sides just to make sure everything is getting a little bit incorporated. So right there. Just make sure that you have olive oil, garlic cloves, basil, and then also the pine nuts. And then this is kind of the texture that we're going for. You want to make sure that it is spreadable. And basically, if you're finding that it's really dry, then you need to add more olive oil. That's what that's saying to you. Okay, so going back to the dish itself, this dish is great because it can be served either hot or cold. In our case, we are going to serve it cold. And so these are your butter beans. And what you're going to do first is you are just going to drain them. Sorry, long pause there. Okay, so once you have them drained, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your bowl and you are just going to arrange your butter beans in the bowl. Just kind of like throw them in there. So that's what they look like. All right. And then in this dish, what we're going to do next is we are going to dollop some ricotta. So I have this very fun basket ricotta from the co-op. That is my new favorite. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get this out. And a spoon. And you're just going to kind of open that up. Okay, and you are going to take some ricotta. And if you want to get kind of a little bit fancier with it, you can do it with 2 spoons. Kind of try to like create a shape or something. This one's really not as smooth as I was hoping. But you're just going to throw it in there. You're going to dollop it. Just like that. And like I said, if you want to do this warm, you can just kind of heat those beans up. But you don't want to heat them up for too long. You're just trying to warm them through. Keep in mind these beans are already cooked. All right, so there is your ricotta. And then we're going to do the same thing with the pesto, kind of just like dotting it around. So I'm just grabbing the pesto straight from the blender. Just kind of.
So I guess keeping the pesto thicker makes it closer to the consistency of the ricotta.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter all that much because people are just going to kind of scoop up in there however they want. So kind of whatever you're feeling. I've definitely gone with like a wetter kind of pesto before too. All right, so once you have that all done, what we're going to do is zest some lemon. Actually, before I do that, what I'm also going to do is get some bread ready to serve with this. You can serve it with a crusty bread, or you can serve it with some crackers, whatever you kind of have on hand that's a little bit easier. A fun fact is that I actually freeze all my bread. So I keep all my bread in the freezer and I slice it up and I just kind of pop it out and then I broil it, basically, is the secret to it. But you do have to keep a little bit of an eye on it. So I'm just gonna do that right here. All right. Okay, so with this, now we're gonna go back to zest our lemon. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I also do really love a microplane. They don't pay me to say that, but I do.
I do as well.
They're fantastic. Okay, so you're gonna zest the lemon right over it. Okay, and then you're gonna squeeze some lemon juice right over it. I also want it to be known that when I posted about this class and I said I was making this dish, one of my friends who experienced it said that was a great pick because that was a great dish. So people loved this dish last time I served it. Okay, so then what we're gonna do is we are gonna finish it off with two beautiful things. One is black pepper and the other is some olive oil. I'm going with Graza olive oil because I do love this drizzle. So basically all you're gonna do is a fun little drizzle and then a little black pepper.
It's a very fancy pepper grinder.
It is, it's a gravity one. I got it as a gift. One of my favorite things of all time, literally just does it all for you. All right, and then all you gotta do is serve it with some bread. Mine is still in there. Let me double check on it. Definitely a little bit close. Let me give it another minute. Any questions on any of these dishes? Any things that you guys ran into that you have questions on? This is the time for that. Any questions? Any questions on any of these dishes? Any questions on hosting? Any advice on picking a menu or how you seat people or anything else? How you can
So how would you typically serve these? Do you just kind of like lay them out, for example, on your island here?
Yes, I usually lay them out.
Folks just kind of serve themselves.
Exactly. The goal of a really great dish for hosting an event is kind of something that people can kind of self-serve, where it's not taking a ton of your time, since you should be busy kind of mingling and chatting with people, hosting the party. You don't want something that's like a food that's really intensive that you have to check on, which is also why I tend to stay away from foods that are only good when they're warm. Makes it very difficult for you to serve it and just kind of sit it out.
Yeah, so these are both great because they can just sort of sit at room temperature.
They're just hanging out, yeah.
Now, you don't mix the butterbean ingredients together?
No, people will do that naturally once they start kind of serving themselves. And so you just kind of leave it on top as it is in this way.
Something that might be helpful is if you have like a small dish, maybe to just kind of show people how to, serve a little bit of the butterbean.
Oh, I would serve it honestly just like this. And then once I have that bread ready, I'll show you in a second. Kind of like you can do it bread on the side. So kind of like a little bread plate, or you could just put the bread in here actually if you want to do that with crackers is another way. What do I put on my charcuterie board? A couple different things. So I love to get the co-op's cheeses. Obviously, that's everybody's favorite thing about the co-op. And I will usually go and find a couple interesting cheeses, and then I will lay out some labels with whatever descriptors the co-op has given me. So it's like a buttery cheese from Switzerland, from cows that only ate grass for 3 days a week, or whatever it is. I'll write that on the card as a little conversation starter. I'll also put basically, if you look here, this is my collection of all the wood boards that I have for charcuterie boards.
Switch back to the close-up.
This is only a couple of them. I honestly have a ton. But basically I'll lay out stuff on this, and then I will usually use one of my smaller things like this for little fruits or nuts. And one of my very, very favorites that I found actually, because I usually do a cheese shift, is these. If you've never tried these from the co-op, these are so incredibly good. They are these salted cocoa dusted dark chocolate, I want to say it is, cashews from Mitica in Spain.
I'm the official taste tester.
You are. Right? Incredible. They're so good. Every time I put those out on a charcuterie board, they're gone like that. Like people will eat those up.
Where did you find those?
In the co-op, in the aisle with all of the nuts. Okay, so if you have your bread, all you're gonna do. That's great. You'll have to let me know how it goes. And there you go.
Ta-da.
And you can do more bread around. You can do crackers. But now I'm gonna have you taste test a little bit.
Beautiful. We need Michael to come taste it,
Yeah.
so I can hold the camera.
Let me do a little scoop for you too. Bigger piece of bread.
Yeah, I started to munch on it before you.
Yeah, you just went straight for the bread.
So I have a little bit of bean and I have a little bit of ricotta.
And a little bit of pesto.
Mm.
Yeah.
Taste the pesto. It's really good.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, and that is the whole class and how you make those 3 dishes. They're easy to personalize, easy to scale up, and perfect for hosting.
Yeah. This camera, main camera. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. I'm going to put the bread down and I'll eat that after when I'm off camera and I can actually enjoy it.
That's totally fair.
Thank you so much for showing us all these,
Of
Rachel. This was
course.
really great. And I think, I don't know who said it in the comments, but I would definitely second the opinion that these are so simple and like fresh and
Yeah.
healthy ingredients, and super easy and accessible. And I feel like it'd be very easy to make these at home and kind of
Absolutely.
inspire you to like, oh, I'm going to host some people and have a little
Yeah.
party.
It's the
It doesn't
perfect,
require an occasion.
exactly. It's the perfect sharing food, but not in a way that's overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you all for joining us. Did anyone else have any other questions?
Any last
No,
minute
we just got a
questions?
lot of thanks and
Okay.
really great dishes, really great and easy. Thank you.
Wonderful. And if you guys want any other hosting tips from me or want to see on social media, my handle is Rachel H. Luo, L-U-O, and I do post occasional hosting content and recipe ideas.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.